Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 7 of the Entropy Podcast. I'm Francis Gorman, your host, and I'm joined today by Francesco Cipollone, founder and CEO of Phoenix Security. Hi, Francesco. How are you keeping today?
Hey, Francis. Very good. Thank you for having me on the show.
Not at all, not at all. And Francesco, you have a fascinating background that I'd like to explore a little bit. You're obviously you've had the startup Phoenix Security. You're doing quite well in that space. But how did you get to the point where you identified a gap in the market that you could capitalize on, and that Phoenix was born essentially? Where did that come from? Can you talk me through that journey a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for having me on the show. I'm Francesco Cipollone, or Frank for friend, I tend to say. I've been in this industry for quite a while, and I've seen the world changing quite much. So from back in the days when I started with Cisco and Microsoft as a trainer, first of all, and then interestingly enough, people start asking me, "Hey, you teach these things really well. Why don't you start doing things for us or help us with our uh, Cisco appliance or setting up our domain controller and things like that?" And that's naturally from training, it became training and consulting. And then we built some product around it. And that was my first company back in the days in Italy that I sold. And I continue doing that consultative dash product journey for my whole life. And during my journey, when I helped organizations like Vodafone, first of all, doing their first cloud transformation and application security transformation program, or in general, GRC program back in the days as it was called, and then nationwide, I start seeing a path of friction where as soon as you do this transformation, you take everything that you have on prem, you throw it in the cloud, and you know it as well as I do that everything turns red, everything is on fire, but the program needs to deliver, and security is usually left behind, or it's not the friendliest talks about. Hey, you have 40 million vulnerability. Maybe we should do something about that. Yeah. Let's do that when we finish the program. Otherwise, we're not going to make time. And I kept on seeing this friction over the years. I kept on seeing this discussion, not just during the program, but also when you start mopping up the program, it was always left out. And as a security team, we had always frustration because when we were talking to engineers, they said, it's not my priority. I have to deliver that. Otherwise, I get the axe. So if it's not important for your boss, security is never going to be important for you. So sometimes architectural patterns were respected, but most of the time were not. And probably when I hit the nail on the head is when I was running the one of the biggest transformation that I had the opportunity to run. That was back in the days in HSBC, where Richard called me and said, "Hey, can you help me of mopping up the disaster that PwC and other consultancy firm have left out because they sold them scanner, but they didn't solve them solution. They sold them problems basically." So they all of a sudden were doing GCP transformation and other transformation, and they had, let's say, millions of problems to fix with, and not a clue about who owns which problem, what do they have to tell, and why it was important for them. So we started on that journey back in the days to say, hey, let's just talk with engineers. Let's see if we can help them at any point. But even when we were doing excessive work, almost to the point we were saying, fix these three things, fix these four things, this is the solution, just go and implement it. They said, yes, we'll get to it. Let's record a ticket, or prove me that that's actually exploitable, or prove me that that's actually a problem for me in my particular environment. And we were just dying as a team, and we were just on the low end as well, because we had, I think, 32 security engineers against 7,000 developers. So we were, let's say, outpaced, outgunned, and out fatigued.
And I think
So
that's a key piece. Like, you've got that kind of the fatigue, the security fatigue. These guys again, they're creating friction. We just want to run fast than we can in a cloud environment, and all of a sudden, it works. It's not broken, but you've got all of these vulnerabilities. So that's what you're seeing, and you've got different, consultancy agencies coming in selling point solutions without, you know, they're on for a set piece of work and then they're off the field, and you're left behind with different issues on the back of that. So that's definitely an interesting perspective.
Yeah, it's easy to scan. It's easy to find problem. You can find one problem, but it's difficult to say don't fix this, focus on that, or who should do what where. That is the hard part, and that's what we kept on facing in terms of problem. But most importantly, it wasn't just that. Engineers were not authorized to fix security, so it was just lip service, and the only method that the business had was stick. This is the SLA that you have to hit, and if you don't have to hit, and if you don't hit it, you're a bad person. But so what? Nobody ever hit the SLA anytime. Nobody get ever fired for not hitting SLAs. Barely anybody get fired for having a breach these days, because that's not the way to convince people. So what we tried to approach with back in the days was, I sat down with Richard and I said, look, the thing that we're doing is not working. It's not working because if it's not important for your boss, it's never going to be important for you. So all the engineers are doing is following the direction that come from the top. So we need to set a standard, but a standard that is not fixed SLA, because if we started working with SLAs, we would have killed anyone and we would have created a matrix that was not delivering any result. When you can't measure something, not just because you can't measure something that's going to deliver outcome. So we started saying, hey, I have a method, I've tested it over the years. Why? Let me try it out. Let me try it out here. If we can gamify the problem, not at the engineering level, but at the business level. So let's put all the line of business together. Let's give them objective and target. Let's praise the one that hit the target. Let's not demonize, but let's maybe call out the people that for 2 or 3 meetings they don't hit the targets, and let's work with them to actually maybe making those targets more achievable, or understanding if they're understaffed. Like, let's do something that is practical, that is not just a blanket SLA, because those are not delivering the result. And if it doesn't work, you can fire me. So I took that stance because I think it wasn't working, and I think he appreciate with an executive at that level to say, "Hey, I'll put my neck on the line first of all to prove that this working." He said, "Okay, I trust you, but I don't believe you. So just go and do it." So for the next 6 months, we actually spent time to deciding who do we want to work with. First of all, in terms of line of business, the one that were more proactive, building the tool internally. So it was a dashboard that fundamentally communicated from the application security perspective who owns specific things and what was the risk level where they had to hit. And then to hit that risk level, how many action the engineering team needed to do and how long is it going to take to get to that particular point. And then we gamify that at scale, because we actually included all the platform teams and start linking the platform to which application was running on those platforms. And there were teams that were running full stack, you build, you own the platform, or there were teams that were saying there is a platform team and there is an application security team. So we created as well risk metrics that were separated but influenced with each other. Because if you just create SLA, the SLA are flat, but the way you solve software problem and the way you solve platform problem, patching problem are very different. They have different impact, they have different people and different psychology. So we created this system called the Phoenix project at the very beginning. Then it became AppSec Phoenix and then Phoenix Security in the very end when we launched back in 2021. But basically in HSBC, we created this system to actually have meetings around these are the target that we collectively have to hit. Who can hit this target? Who is hitting this target? How long does it take? And all of a sudden, this became a business problem. Business people started competing with each other because executives are extremely competitive with each other. So they always want to look the one that actually hit the target. There is that psychology element that plays around. And our security team, all of a sudden, we were dragged into meeting to actually say, "Hey, you help John to actually achieve his target faster, identifying the path or the things that could achieve those things faster. The library that is deployed in 50 application, or the container that is running maybe 50 times." So all of a sudden, our security team didn't have time because we're dragged in meetings. but it was a different frame. We flipped the script. It was a completely different frame. We weren't asking them to do work on the side of the desk. First of all, it was in the main project. They had sprint cycles or specific time assigned for security because it was important for their boss. And long story short, when the platform started costing too much, I told Richard I go out and I build it and I scale it because I didn't want it to be constrained as well to the one specific organization, because I saw that everybody else had the same problem. I mean, me and you had the same problem back in the days, but it wasn't just about vulnerability.
Yeah, no,
And that's long story short how I started Phoenix, because
that's
I think it was
fascinating.
an important problem to solve.
It is, and yeah, I suppose when you talk about the singular problems, that library that's actually deployed 1,500 times, if you can fix that, then you're creating a downstream impact that's measurable and far more visible than just doing point solution. Maybe off the back of that, then, Francesco, what is the application security posture management landscape like right now? What are the players in the game? Who are you competing with? What's it looking like?
Yeah, I think from when I started, that's a great question, by the way. When I started, um, the concept of application and deployment, or the concept of cloud and application security, was two different concepts: CSPM, or cloud security posture management, and ASPM, application security posture management, or back in the day was even called ASOC, application security tooling and orchestration. Was very different. You had a cluster of tool around, you had application not living in the cloud so much, the container problem was just starting to appear, and that was 2019. Now you take it to 2021 is when critical mass of cloud transformation start hitting, COVID start hitting, so a lot of business had to go digital very quickly. And then on the consequence of that, you had more supply chain attacks because everybody started building their application in a very low code way, in a very quick way, and that starts showing up with attacks later on. You had SolarWind, you had several supply chain attacks as we see in them now. But most importantly, the application security team and the cloud security team start converging, and the convergent point was container. And container is a difficult beast because they're built in layer, they usually run by a team, but built from another team. You need to understand where the application lives and what you can fix inside the container in the layer of the OS layer, and what you can need to ask basically the team that maintains that container to actually fix, and in their build file where the application get built, or in the container declaration file where the container comes from. But you need to trace basically which application runs where. And that's where a lot of organizations right now are stuck and are trying to handle. And that's one of the things that we build with Phoenix, that is called reachability analysis. They basically look at what you build and where you run it, and try to fix that container problem. I don't think we fixed the container problem altogether, but we are approaching critical mass with 6 or 7 techniques to reducing basically the noise and to propose remediation. And I think we're doing some exciting work with agentic AI to actually create logical based remediation for the team that actually look at a group of problems.
I was going to ask you, have you gone down the path of AI integration yet, like the masses have, and are you seeing a value proposition come out there, or is it just great to have in terms of a marketing term?
We had AI before AI was cool. So we had AI to profile basically application on the technology stack. We had AI for similarity analysis, and we have AI to actually trace and profile which application get built on the build file, and then we do a matching profile on the container file so that we can do this matching agentless and not touching the container, not touching runtime, because those are very intrusive and is very heavy on the machines, and you need to handle a lot of data, and sometimes you don't want to give all of your data to a third party company that maybe is secure, maybe sometimes it might not be secure at some point. So we try to minimize as well the number of data, the amount of data that we have from our client perspective, having a
Yeah,
security
no,
mindset.
That is definitely becoming more of a concern for organizations, especially as the different sprawls of agentic AI pop up in all of the different SaaS platforms that people are consuming. It does bring me to a question around automation and the human element, though. How do you, in your view, balance that automation aspect with the human element in the security decision making that underpins a lot of these things? And you know yourself, working in large organizations, sometimes people take perfectly good applications and infrastructure and modify them or customize them past any level of recognition that if you were to make a change, it would fundamentally undermine what that thing is supposed to do. Whereas the automation aspect looks for patterns and similarities, etc. Have you seen any nasties there, or is there still a role for the human? Is there some stuff that you can automate seamlessly, and other things that need proper intervention, or a man in the middle type of a lens to validate that the decisions being made don't create operational impacts?
I'm going to always answer this question with one answer: use a tool like a tool, otherwise, you become the tool. So, long story short, I don't think machines can replace human, but human with machine will replace human without machine and automation. So your security engineers with LLM or augmented information or refined set of information will be 10x the engineers that actually do everything by hand, want to build his own dashboard, still work with spreadsheet. So if you work in 1999 with spreadsheet land, then you're going to be replaced by the junior engineers that work with LLMs and work with optimization. And that's the kind of profile of person that we're working for our agentic module, to not replace the human, but augment the human and give them very refined information. Because what machines are great at is dealing with tons of information, tons of correlation. But what machine is not good is painting a picture from a risk perspective, convincing the executive, talking and understanding the challenges that an engineer has at that particular point in time. No machine can replace that. So I think the next era is going to be maybe losing a little bit this hype that machines can solve all of the problem, and will be redimensionize this problem and saying, hey, let's use technology to actually augment our capabilities and deliver a program with our human aspect enhanced by technology, enhancing by this agentic module to resolve a problem, not just having this module to do the work for ourselves. Because I think I've seen a recent study that machines and LLM modules are wrong 80% of the time. So you need to use, and we are a massive user. So every workflow inside Phoenix is AI augmented, either with external tool or with our own tool. So a massive believer on agentics and modules, but not with a blindfolded way. And I start seeing this creeping up because LLM or automated code generators are now proliferating, and I'm a user of it. So, but I'm a user with criteria. So I see what the suggestion they give us, and then I apply it, and I'll ask specific prompt of like, can you generate a particular piece of code securely? I understand that then that particular code needs to be deployed. It needs to have compensating control. What a code generator can give you is a perfectly safe system to operate in, is a way to deploy securely, is a way to remove things. They can produce a piece of code, but is that code secure? Is that particular code will be run securely in a secure environment and with security principle? Any LLM won't be able to give you that. So we start seeing the new generation of no coder or vibe coding or YOLO coder, as I call them, of like taking a piece of code, committing it somewhere, because AWS and any other cloud provider right now want to capitalize on people using their service, because they don't care if the service is secure or not secure. They just want you to run more things in the cloud and spend more money in the cloud. So if you can remove the friction and saying, hey, you can just write a prompt and it give you a perfectly safe website, that's probably not the case. You can get there by using the LLM to say, can you generate me a front end? Can you prevent me from the top 10 OWASP attack? Can you prevent me from buffer overflow? Can you give me instruction on how to handle identities? But you need to understand how a system works. You can't just ask those questions out of a spreadsheet or out of a YouTube guide module that says build your website in 3 days and get it breached in the sixth.
Yeah, no, this is the second time this has come up on the podcast series around the knowledge gap. I had Chris Davis on. He's the chief hacking officer for River Security a couple of episodes back, and he was speaking about, you can run a tool and you get root and you're delighted, but why are you root? Do you understand the fundamentals of how you got there, or did a tool just do everything for you? And I think that kind of encapsulates where we are with agent based AI at the moment. People are creating all sorts of things, but they fundamentally don't understand what underpins that creation that they've made. The code, as you said, the logic, the back end, the parameters that allow you to integrate with downstream systems or whatever. So I do think we have an interesting couple of years in the security world ahead, as people take maybe shortcuts to deal with the friction. The new guys come in and he's all geared up on his AI stuff. Maybe I'll do a bit of acceleration myself, before he replaces me, and all of a sudden we might start seeing different types of Frankenstein code or applications appearing in enterprise
we
environments if we're
start
not
seeing that
careful. So
we
yeah,
start seeing that already. Like we're seeing, well, the next generation of SaaS application, I think Y Combinator said 25 or 30% of their new generation of startup has 95% of code completely vibe generated, so completely automated and generated. That might have been a marketing statement, but we start seeing the use of LLM or malicious LLM to actually generate exploit, to actually explore unexploited vulnerabilities and produce code. So we need to understand it as well. We are not the only one who have access to LLMs, but also the attacker have access to LLMs, and they are augmenting their capabilities because they have financial and monetary interest to actually create damage. So they're going to use every single possible method to actually make their cash going and their ransomware going, shortening the attack framework. So prioritizing your work and using technology like Phoenix or like any prioritization technology is not anymore nice to have. It's a must have if you want to survive, because I think we're seeing attack being implemented, exploited in 3 days, in 3 minutes sometimes. So I think that was one of the CI/CD tool, IntelliJ. The exploit got from the time it got published to exploitation, it took 3 minutes. And right now it's
yeah.
taking 295 days to fix a critical vulnerability.
So let's talk about that. So the length of time it now takes. So that is a stark reality. If someone can create and publish something in minutes, but operationally it takes days, months, years for an industry to get on top, or an enterprise to get on top of a vulnerability and attach it. That means prioritization, a critical aspect of enterprise security. A lot of enterprises have geared up threat intelligence teams, to do threat hunting, etc. This is an abstract lens that even sits below that. Again, it's pulling out those libraries that can be exploited. So how do you, in terms of prioritization, how do you believe companies should think about risk in that context of that new world, that speed to market for a bad actor versus the ability of an organization to get ahead?
No, that's a great question. And I love the fact that you bring up threat intelligence, because as an industry, we are obsessed with the latest threats, but 85% of attacks are using old threats. Like expose, we still have Log4j.
We do.
We still have Log4j spread it across, Spring4Shell, Heartbleed. You don't need to go and explore the latest threat. Yes, maybe it's gonna hit the news. You can fix it immediately. I think today the Kubernetes cluster things hit the news. You have tons of Kubernetes exploited and exploitable, but you still have unpatched Windows. You still have Windows 95 running. You still have System 200, Windows 200 running with remote code execution, unauthenticated access that is widely exploitable and widely weaponizable. So let's try to get to the low hanging fruit. That's one of the missions that we have in Phoenix, to actually reduce at scale the attack surface, so that fundamentally the things that you need to cover is the crown jewel, and there you can focus on the new method of attacks. Because an attacker is not going to exploit a 0 days for you unless you are Coinbase, like we've seen with the latest TJ action, to be exploited at scale, or you are a system that is implemented in a lot of other systems like SolarWind attack, where those things, the attacker burn a 0 day, because a 0 day costs million, because nobody has access to it, and it's still hidden in the wild. um, so you have a good chance, but it's sold for millions. So as a nation state, you have the cash to actually do that, but you're going to do that to actually get the money for your next missile launch attack or things like nuclear reactors are doing. You're not going to waste it to a lot of organization unless you can weaponize. So we have a threat intelligence module in Phoenix that understand the likelihood of ransomwareness of a specific attack by, and that's where we apply the agentic module, where we understand the characteristic of your vulnerability, and we say these things have remote code execution, zero access methods. So the likelihood of something like this to be exploited by a specific threat actor is this one. So maybe instead of shift left, you can patch left. Did I lose the camera?
Makes a lot of sense. So it does, Francesco. Makes a lot of sense. So in terms of in terms of that, you touched on something there interesting, which is the software aspects. How many organizations do you see that have a software bill of materials in place? Is that a gap that we really need to start prioritizing across different organizations?
I hate the bill of material. I hate the bill of material question because I think it's an obsession by industry that. So let me explain a little bit. And I have a podcast with Steve Spring, that is one of the creator of the bill of material. But the purpose of the bill of material was to gather asset inventory and software asset inventory. All of a sudden, it became the obsession of creating SBOM because there was a regulation behind. But the objective of the bill of material was to say, you have this library, you can take this library, you can risk assess some of them. That's why the VEX was created, or the Vulnerability Exchange bill of material version that says, you have this library, this is not applicable for me, this is not reachable, and so on. But then you start seeing CBOM or PBOM or any bomb, really. So bill of material, so asset inventory was the things that we were trying to solve with bill of material as an industry. Which part of this software is running in your application? How do you define an application? So I think we're beyond bill of material. We should understand how applications are composed. And with Phoenix, we have automation and suggestion tool to actually give you, hey, you have this repository that is touched by these people that have these common characteristics. So maybe you want to put in together. You have these applications that are running maybe on this system, because we can identify container image, so we can trace which container get run from where, or which repo get run in which container. So it's understanding who need to solve what. That was the original purpose of the bill of material, and unpack this beast of application to actually have asset inventory. And Steve is an asset inventory guy.
That's brilliant. I love that. I kind of want to ask you what else in the cybersecurity world needs a conversation that we need to proliferate out to the media, the media now, based on the back of that. Anything else bugging you outside of software builds and materials?
Aside from software bill of material, I think, well, we haven't solved the asset inventory problem, first of all. We still have a problem with inventory, with understanding who needs to do what where. That hasn't gone away. And you have very advanced we have very advanced clients that have brought 2 or 3 blogs in our website to say how we solve this with Phoenix at scale, how we ask engineers to produce their bill of material, their product bill of material, in a file, and include that as part of a gating process, as a not security quality, but as a engineering practice quality. Tell me who is touching this particular set of code or this repo, who is maintaining. Do asset inventory from a software perspective, but without bugging them on, hey, you need to log in service now, you need to declare every single thing, because those things weren't built for software. And you kill engineers if you do that. So we built, for example, an integration with Backstage to track to go where engineers actually track this information, we built what we call autoconfig, that is basically a declarative YAML-based CMDB, where you can embed those things inside your repo. You can declare it as an engineer. You don't even have to touch Phoenix. You can just provide that or a link to that particular element. And as a security team, you can say, if you don't have the Phoenix declarative YAML file, you're not going to pass a security gate in your product, in your CI/CD pipeline. So it's trying to meet engineers where they are, to remove the friction and basically have them declaring what is the problem. Sorry, what do they own? And then we can attach all of the vulnerability that are linked to those things and say, you own this particular set of vulnerability. Now let me suggest what are the vulnerabilities that you need to address. And as an industry, we've been selling silver bullets. Unfortunately, every vendor on earth comes to you and say, I have the magic wand that can give you everything for free. Unfortunately, as a practitioner, we know very well that that's not happening. So we say, we have technology and AI that's going to help you accelerating, but you need to do a little bit of work to get all of the work done. And you can collaborate with engineers. Call me mad, but I'll still believe they're not going to sell to everybody the magic wand that's going to give them the asset inventory. But we have a way to automate, and with a little bit of work, you can get the problem solved, because we solved it at scale with several of our clients. With, I think, 2,000 to 3,000 applications running on service and reducing. I think we started with some of them with 13 million vulnerability. We ended up with sub-million vulnerabilities to solve, and 100 critical rather than millions of critical.
Yeah,
So
I think if everything worked like the vendor demo, life would be so much easier. You know, I think it brings me back to an analogy I heard years ago when we got sent to a marriage course before we got married, myself and my wife, and the guy there, he said, there's only one thing I need you to know, and he said, there's your expectations of what married life is, and then there's the reality. And I think you can apply that to cybersecurity vendor world as well.
I love that. I'm going to steal that.
My expectation of what this thing is going to do, and then when I actually deploy it, what it does is always two different things. So, look, Francesco, it was a really interesting conversation. Thanks for coming on the show. I think we're up on time, so we'll leave it there. But I really appreciate having the chat, and it was really wonderful to talk to you.
Brilliant. Francis, thank you very much. And everybody, if you want to know more, we have podcast episode running. We do a lot of knowledge sharing and knowledge base. So visit phoenix.security. I'm on LinkedIn as well. So hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm quite chatty and quite active and quite opinionated.
We'll
But
make
we
sure
also
people
share a
check it
lot of
out.
threat intelligence.
Excellent. Thanks, Francesco. And look, if anyone wants to tune in over to Phoenix and get a look at the content over there, take
Brilliant.
care.
Thank you very much, Francis. And stay safe out there.